He doesn't live like I live, you know?
Ladies, we are live. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And yeah, we are welcoming Danielle all the way from New Jersey. Good to see you, Jamila. I'm sure you have a paddle tournament on today. So I'm going to let you say hi to everyone and then we'll read the bio afterwards.
Hi, Anissa. Thank you for that warm welcome. And yes, of course, paddle every day, all day. You know what it's like with with me. But I'm so happy to have our guest Daniela on with us today. Irrespective of how busy the week is and how tired I may be on a Friday, because it's turning out to be one of my busiest days whatsoever. But we come on at 3:30 week in and week out, and we're so blessed to have such amazing guests on this podcast that I'm instantly rejuvenated. I feel excited and energetic, and so look forward to this 1 hour each week. We have Danielle, we have different numbers of people joining in each week, and I promise you we love to have people listening, because I think that this is such a great platform, to learn more about yourself and to hear the success stories of the guests that we've had on. um, but it's just unbelievable, how much this has made us grow and how much this has helped both Anissa and I, that the numbers really don't matter. I mean, we'd love for more people to join, but as we've said before, sometimes a guest is brought on specifically just either for myself or Anissa or both of us, because there's a message that's waiting to be delivered to us. So I'm really excited about having you on today. And Anissa, without any more further ado, please go ahead and share with us this amazing bio of
So
Daniela's.
before I get into the bio, we're on episode 89. And if we take 8 and 9, it's 17. If we take that and add it together, it's 8. So it's pretty apt that we in the number of abundance,
Yes.
really for this episode. So without further ado, I'm just going to give some background. Unfortunately, Instagram, we have a challenge. We can't connect there, but we're happy to see you still on YouTube and LinkedIn. And the topic today is really about not my message, but Danielle's message around wealth isn't something you chase, it's something you become, right? We're going to explore some how to, have some nervous system recalibration around this. Embodiment is a big word today, and radical authenticity, which can expand your capacity for wealth, fulfillment, and freedom. So let's give you a sneak preview about our guest. She's an author, and she will talk more about who wrote her forward, which I'm just wowed by. She's a speaker and entrepreneur and founder of the Embodied Woman Community, known for her unapologetic, yes, truth telling and frequency shifting presence. She guides visionary women to dismantle the good girl conditioning. Yes, recovering, embody their feminine power and create businesses that become living, breathing expressions of their soul. Her work is rooted in a single truth: wealth isn't something you chase, as we said, it's something you become. And then she also helps women expand their capacity to receive more money, greater fulfillment, and the freedom to lead on their own terms. A single mom, yes, in Monmouth County, New Jersey. She writes, speaks, and leads from the front lines of feminine leadership, modeling what it means to live fearlessly authentic, unapologetically expressed, and wildly free. Welcome. Wow.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to this
Wow.
conversation.
I'm impressed with myself after hearing that. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Where did it all start for you? I mean, what took you on to this? As we always say, this is the hero's journey. And where was your first quest that you embarked on that got you to this place?
Yeah. Am I allowed to go there? Can I just go there?
Yes,
Okay.
nothing's off limits here, darling.
Yeah. And so I talked about it a little bit in the book, but I was sexually abused by my Catholic school teacher when I was 13 years old.
Mm,
And so just that alone, right? You can probably even just like hear all the layers of
mm,
complication that comes with that, right? And
yes.
and I say that because I remember as I was in the very, I mean, young, early healing part of my journey, um, I remember thinking, I wish that I had been attacked in an alleyway at knife point because it would have
Mm,
been much more cut and dry
yes.
than what it
Mm,
was, right?
mm,
And so I would say for me, um, that was sort of, I mean, a very young awakening, but an
mm,
awakening to um, asking questions that I don't think a 13-year-old asks. I think a 13-year-old today is like, the biggest worry is, can I get tickets to the Taylor Swift concert? That's the
yes.
conversations that 13-year-olds are having, decorating their locker, or what water bottle is cool to be carrying to school these days. But for me, the question was why. What this Because I always had a very deep faith, and I don't exactly even know where that came from,
Mm,
right? But I always had this connection to source, God, spirit, right? To know that I came from somewhere else, that I was this spiritual being. I don't think I had those words at the time.
mm,
But the question was, why? What is the purpose of this? There has to be a purpose, because why would this happen if there wasn't a purpose for it? And why are we here? Like, why are we here? And that is the craziest questions to be asking as not just a teenager, but a young teenager,
yes.
So that's to me where it sort of sparked and started this journey of really understanding, trying to figure out, yeah, what is my purpose here, and what is this all about?
That's wow. I mean, you started off just with a very powerful testimony. And firstly, I want to acknowledge your vulnerability in sharing, because this is what the segment is all about, to create the space and so that our stories don't go to the grave with us, that our stories are bigger than us. It's in pursuit of, as what you were saying, that big existential question that is normally asked at our midpoint of our lives, here at the very uh, early stages of transitioning into your adolescent years.
Yeah.
So for me, that is, we don't see it at that time as a purpose and a gift, and the language that you've just framed earlier on, because we're in that sort of grudge state, like, why me?
Mm.
So how did you shift out of the cut and dry, it should have just been that, to how the hell did just happen to me? Why me? And the resentment and the anger and the guilt and the shame that was attached to that. How did you move from that part, which is really the trials and the tribulations that you were going through, into coming back with wisdom and insight?
Yeah. So I don't think I ever asked the question, why me? I
Mm,
think I grew up Catholic, right? And so I feel like I'm a recovering Catholic because there's a lot of guilt and shame that goes along with that. When I was
mm,
growing up, maybe it's different now, right? And so I really identify more as deeply spiritual, right? But
yes.
I don't think I ever asked the question, why me? Because I always felt like, it was my cross to bear, right? Like it sort of felt like, um, because the messages back then, God doesn't give you any more than you can handle, right?
Yes.
That is something that, and so for me, it almost felt like I had to accept that this was a burden that I was going to have to carry, and this
Mm,
was a burden that was part of my journey. I will say that it took many, 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 many years of continuing to ask this question. It wasn't a question that was answered like that, right? And what I've come to understand was that uh, as I did healing work, I mean, I did every modality under the sun to do my own healing work, right? I've done therapy, I've done group therapy, I've done energy work. I've done shamanic journeys. I've done soul journeys. I've done past life regressions. I mean, you name it, I did it as a way to heal. You know, I think I got into yoga, you know, as a way to heal and not really understanding that there was this whole inner world because I was very young. You know, when you think back to where we are and we look at a 13-year-old, they're babies. You know what I mean? And so what I think when I had my own children, so I had my kids are 21 months apart, and at the time they were only 1 and 2, and I found myself in the middle of a divorce. I have a master's degree. You know, my son was a baby. He was still nursing. You know, he wasn't even not even 1 yet. My daughter wasn't 3 yet, right? Because I was in that stage of, you know, and I remember being at my parents' house because I had nowhere to go, which was they had retired like 800 miles away from where I grew up. So, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And I went to go stay with them, with the kids, with the babies. And I remember having this very distinct, like, you ever have those lightning bolt moments where it's just like, it hits you. And I was sort of like came out of myself a little bit. And I was looking at my life and I'm looking at these 2 babies and they were playing on the floor. And I was looking at my surroundings, and here I am 800 miles from anything I've ever known, anyone I've ever known. I have no money, right? I'm well educated, but I have no money. I have no real friends at the time. And what I realized is that everything that I was creating was from this very inner place of I'm unworthy and shame, right? I am unworthy and there is shame. And it was coming from this wound. So no matter what I did to help heal, there was still this underlying driving force that was creating that was driving my life, like the men that I chose and all the things, you know? So, I think that was where I realized, okay, yeah, I have to do something because I am not generationally going to hand this down to my kids. I got to figure this out. I need to figure this out. And I realized I am the common denominator of all my decisions and all my outcomes. That was sort of the awareness in that moment. And that was it. I made a decision and I thought I could be bitter or I can be better. And I have a long way to go to raise my kids. What am I going to choose? I want them to be what they see of me, not what I tell them, right? You know, a lot of parents, they'll say, don't do it like I did, you know, do this, but they still live, right? So I just thought I got to be it. And so that was really the beginning of the turning point of the journey.
Wow, that's so powerful. I think it was Mandela who said it best. Hey, Anissa, be the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
So you have to be, you have to embody it, especially when it comes to your kids, because you have to be that living example of what you want them to be as well. And you know, it's so amazing that you bring up the fact that you didn't want this to move on to another generation. And, you know, just as you did, I also felt that terrible, horrible, hollow feeling of I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, I don't fit in, I don't belong. You know, who do I think I am to expect this from my life? And when you start to do that inner work and you learn about different modalities and understand about looking from one modality to another, which are all imperative towards your healing. I think one of the greatest ones that, you know, really sat well with me and which I had a real learning from was theta healing and, the generational family constellations. And you realize Yeah, and you realize that it's not just about you, and it goes
Mm-mm.
back so many generations, and you have to decide that it's enough. It stops here, and it
Yes.
stops with me, so that it can begin differently for our next generation going forward.
Mhm.
So, taking on that responsibility, also like you don't have a mouthpiece. You don't share your story. You don't, as to fit into that good girl image. You have to be quiet. You have to follow the rules. You have to do as you're told, and
Mhm.
that signifies your success as a woman. And then when you start to break all of those molds, you immediately become not good enough. Everything, all of the insecurities, all the limiting beliefs that you allow yourself to believe come to the fore from the external, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of tears, and a lot of failures and knockdowns, but you have to just keep on getting up. What I'd like to ask you is, how did you find your voice? Because telling your story and narrating it um, isn't just therapeutic for yourself and helps you to grow from the experiences that you've had, but also to grow into who you're meant to be and what your purpose is meant to be. But it's what helps others who come into your space, who listen to your story. So, what was it, that allowed you to do this, to share this powerful story of yours, so that it not only benefited your children, but the women that you have in your space?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. I think one of the things is that this book took me over 5 years to write. And it took that long because every time I'd go to write it, right, I realized there was still parts of me that were writing or um, moving from a victim consciousness. And one of the things that was really, really important to me was that I was writing from a place of power.
Mm.
And so I allowed the book really to guide me. The book is channeled. Most of it is channeled, right? And so I really made sure to keep it in a place of, like, it's not a memoir, it's not an autobiography, it's not all about me. It's about sharing pieces and parts of my story that allow another woman to be able to see themselves within my story, in their story, right? Because I think that, when we're talking about, because I talk a lot about nervous system and somatics and money, because I do believe money for me. I think there's a certain person, right, in the world where money is our teacher, right? I think relationships can be your teacher. I think money can be, I think everything could be your teacher, right? But I think for me, money was such a teacher because it was such a mirror of how I was connecting my worthiness, how I was connecting being enough. And so as I distilled my own medicine, that's like part of what I talk about in the book. Distilling your soul's medicine is your strategy, right? It is the strategy. And so when you start looking at your life and you start looking around at the path, you realize, right? And then obviously I work with lots of women. When I share that, I can recognize like where they're at or what's happening for them internally. And I can say, it seems like, it sounds like, is this what's happening for you? We are more alike than we are different. And so what I realized is, by me sharing and writing this book in particular, right? And sharing the story or sharing pieces of the story, what I've come to understand is that when you are sharing and expressing from a place of this very dharmic, you like to fulfill your purpose on this planet, this is part of what we need to share, right? This is part of the work, and that it comes from the heart and soul. right? That's a very different way to move than making it all about me and making it about I'm afraid or I'm scared or I'm embarrassed or I might feel shame, or not to say those things might not trigger, but I think it's about part of us as women. We need to know that it's okay to be fully expressed. We need to know that it's okay to share. We need to know that, that is part of our work, right? And the only
Yeah.
way that we can alchemize that is by talking.
I love the word alchemize because it's turning lead into gold in the typical alchemist version of it. But it essentially is, in another way to describe it. Let me just get Jamila. Oh, she is on. Okay, she's back on. I think she might have connectivity challenges. But we are waiting for your presence again, Jamila. And let me, while I'm at it, just acknowledge Ronald from the US. He's back. Good to have you back here, Ronald. And then we have Shahid and Navira, who's also our regular normally on Instagram, but sorry, Instagram followers, but you'll have to watch the replay. And then Ronald was saying, you stood and this can't go on. Oddly enough, I returned to Catholic mystics contemplated. Jamila, I think there's an interference on your side. Do you just want to mute? Okay, I think it's gone. Yes, and Ronald also says, I've learned a lot from women recovering #workaholic. Jamila, I think there's do you want to just mute on your side? Yeah, I think it's a connectivity issue there. So coming back to alchemizing and really sitting within, I think what I'm hearing you say, Danielle, is that we've got to almost value, connect, integrate, love all parts of ourselves as it shows up. And so when you're describing these different experiences, it's not labeling it as you simply because you would love others to be able to see the gift and opportunity with what the experiences are presenting. And at least that's how I understand how you're describing it. But essentially, it means that we have to sit in the mud and to become the lotus flower, right?
I think
So let's
most of
just
us
see if we can get it.
are that for sure.
Yes. So I mean, the part I want to get back to is the money, the relationship with money,
Sure.
because you spoke about I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, and that performance needing to earn through being the good girl. And so money does play a significant role because money, some would see as the root to all evil, or money is power. And or money, there's never enough of it, so it's that scarcity, lack, poverty mindset. And or it's a struggle to get to money. And that is deep rooted back to that belief system of feeling worthy and good enough, but it's also related to different archetypes, right? And I know there are many different archetypes in the money descriptions. Are you back, Jamila? I think she's trying to walk
I'm
around
back,
and get
Anissa.
something.
Much better.
No. Is it just me hearing the distortion, Danielle? Can
Oh
you
no,
hear
I
it?
hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear it.
Okay,
So Danielle, while we're waiting, okay, because it's very bad, Jamila. Don't you want to just mute for a moment? Can you talk to us maybe about, what is this the different relationships we have with money and how we can cultivate a better relationship with it to feel more abundant and worthy and deserving of?
Yeah, so I think of money as energy. Like, where does everything come from? Everything's energy. Where did the tree come from? Where did the books come from? Where does your bed come from? Where does the leaves come from? Where does it all come from? Right? it's all energy, right? It's all been created, right? If you want to say it's been a creation from God or universe, source, spirit, right? It's all energy. It all comes from the same place. We all come from the same place. Where do we go after we're here? We go back to, right? Infinite intelligence. We are all one. That's why we are all one. And so money to me is no different than that. What happens is money has been used, right, as a tool to have power over, to feel power under, right? And there is a lot of projection that we have around this idea, right? There's a lot of conditioning around, if you have more, you are more worthy. If you have less, you are less worthy. What I know is we are not our circumstances, right? What I truly believe is we have the ability to create anything that we desire. Why do I believe that? Because I believe that every person, right, has within them source, a soul, essence, right? And so when we project, I think money's an easy place to project our what I call emotional debt. We all carry emotional debt. We maybe emotional debt of feeling unworthy or shame or guilt or fear or worry or anxiety or self-loathing or hate, right? Like whatever your debt is based on your experiences. And when we project that onto money, right, then we are now in relationship to money, either in repelling it or harmonizing with it. Because most people, right, the women that I work with, right, the way that we want to make money is through our soul work, right? We want to be able to bring money in and create a better life for ourselves and freedom and fulfillment. And, we want to feel like we have this amazing, satisfying life, which I believe is prosperity. But where does that come from? And it goes back to, remember when I said, when I had that realization that I am the common denominator for everything, taking full responsibility that I am the common denominator for everything, then that means it's my responsibility, right, to heal this relationship with money as evidence or as a way, because money is a byproduct of, it is a result of, it's not the reason we come out and do this work. Just like we were talking about the vanity metrics, right? That's a byproduct of. Money is a byproduct of, right? It is a result. And so, when we come back to this place within ourselves and understand that, this is where we need to do our money work, right? This is where it all is. And then where we vibrate at, what we align with, how we, what our frequency is, what we are in harmony with, that is truly how we start to move in a way that is more in terms of the identity that we are, the self-image, right? Remember I said, I don't want to write this book from a self-image of a victim. I want to write this from a self-image of a successful, powerful woman. Self-image plays a huge role. And really, as you said, doing your inner work, looking at all your stuff, that plays a role. And really deciding over and over again that, this is my trajectory. This is where I'm going. I think deciding is probably one of the most powerful tools I've learned on my journey.
I mean, that emotional projection is where I'm wanting you to dig a bit deeper, because that was like, okay, if it's an emotion, your relationship with money is connected to your emotional projection.
Yes.
Can you unpack that a little bit deeper? And I know, Jamila, you wanted to add a question in there.
Yeah, the thing is that we're constantly working on ourselves, right? And it's only by that constant awareness of where you are that you can manifest and you can bring things or start living the life that you want. But it's not always that easy, is it?
No.
Irrespective of where you are in your journey, it's not always that easy to live from and to remove yourself from that routine or from those patterns that we've learned, and those behaviors that have been cultivated within us to live from a space of lack. And Yes, having the right people around you is something that motivates you and gets you back into that groove. But you're always going to get back to that space where you feel like you are living from a space of lack. Um, Please just also, maybe if you can unpack for us on how we can reassure ourselves and bring us back into that vibration where we understand that we deserve and we belong, and that we all we need to do is just claim that life that we dream that we could have.
Yeah, no, I love that question. So essentially, I mean, I think it's best for me to share it in just from my own story and how I did that for myself. So, after I had made that decision and I realized, okay, I'm the common denominator, my thought was, okay, I'm going to be the guinea pig of these ideas of universal law or of law of attraction, right? Like these universal laws, that this idea that there is, I always thought of God as a entity, a man with a long white beard that sat on a chair up in the clouds like a king and was doing like this, watching everything I did, right? And
Yes.
so the idea at this time, like it was around this time that I had this idea of put inside of me that no, God is within me, right? God and source are within me, right? That my desire, that the word desire, I actually even talk about this in the book, the root word of desire is of the Lord. And that was something that a mentor told me, I mean, a gazillion years ago. And I remember thinking that, hearing that and not quite understanding it, but when you have a desire within you to have something, more money, you want to be more, do more, have more, right? A lot of us are shamed for that. As Anissa said, the money is the root of all evil. Money is the problem, right? Don't be, right? Like all those things. And so I think that for me, as I decided I was going to be this guinea pig to do this work and figure out how I was going to make money, and I was by myself with 2 kids, I did a lot of mindset and manifestation work, right? Like that was sort of where the journey sort of took me. I didn't seek it out. It sort of fell in my lap. As like, oh my gosh. And then of course The Secret, right, in 2006 sort of blew me away, like, oh my God, this is possible. What the Bleep is another movie that at the time was like, I was like, oh my gosh. And it's probably the only thing in my life for as long as I could remember where the power was put back into me. And that was really a big part of like, oh, wait, I have the power. And so needless to say, I did what I thought was manifestation and mindset work. 3 times I found myself on food stamps, okay, with kids. 4 times my car got repossessed. Talk about shame. And then my grand finale was I was homeless. I had nowhere to live. For months, I had nowhere to live. And I thought, how did I get here? And so there was a night where I was sleeping on my massage table because I had an energy medicine practice locally. And I had sent my kids 2.5 hours away to go stay with my parents just so I could because they were in school and I still had some work. And it was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I had this again, that lightning bolt moment. They don't come often, but when they come with a jolt. And it was this quote that I had read many, many times, which is a Napoleon Hill quote. And it was, opportunity comes disguised as temporary misfortune and defeat. And I had never understood it. Right? You hear these quotes, you read these great, teachers, but it's like, but do you really live it? Do you really understand it? Have you really embodied it? Right? And I remember jumping up going, oh my God, because I had done enough work, right? Like Jamila, we were just saying, this work never ends. We've all done a lot of work, right? And all of a sudden I went, oh my God, where's the opportunity in this? Where is the opportunity in this? And I jump up and I grab my laptop and I don't even remember what I Google, and YouTube comes up with this video. And it was a video of the nervous system. It was the video of this video of how this woman's nervous system was in survival. And she goes down this very science route of explaining survival and fight and flight and fawn and freeze and all these things. And I realized, ding, 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 how could someone like me manifest anything when I am in a pattern internally of survival? Mindset for someone like me is not going to work. I can't think a cup of coffee and there's a cup of coffee. I couldn't even manifest a cup of coffee. Never mind try to manifest myself out of survival. And that was a huge breakthrough for not just me, but what I realized, because I believe if it's in my heart and if it's happening to me, then it's happening to other people. Other people must have experienced this. And what I believe to be true for me, and for many of the women that I work with, is that money is the thing that we can't live without. Money is the thing that we can't turn away from. We have to face it. We got to figure it out. We got to understand it. We got to create a different relationship with it. And it cannot be ignored. If money is your teacher, you cannot ignore. There's no way you can ignore it. Other things you can ignore. You can blame someone else, you can hide, you can strategize your safety, but money, no, you can't live on this planet without it. So I realized, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity here. Within 24 hours, I was enrolled to be a certified somatic therapist without even having gone to one session myself. And it was that part of the journey that I realized, oh, when the teachers of manifestation or mindset talk about, or when Neville Goddard talks about feeling is the secret, what he's saying is, if we do not go into the feeling mind, which is the subconscious mind, is the feeling mind, we will constantly be just at the surface level of repeating old patterns and paradigms and conditioning over and over and over again. That we need to go in to where this wiring actually lives, that actually got us to where we are, right? So we can be grateful. It's all for us. Right? It got us to where we are, but we are not organized for wealth. We are not organized for money. We are organized for survival. We're organized to be where we are right now.
Damn, that's a truth bomb of note.
I
felt that. I felt that. So, Danielle, I'll share a bit of my story with you and why this resonates so deeply for me today, because as a child, I wasn't raised with my parents, but the home that I grew up in, there was never enough. It was disproportionate use of credit, debt, facilities. They would hide from creditors when they came knocking, and they would send us, the kids, to say, well, tell them we're not here. So my early memory of money was, it is sneaky. It is like, you need to hustle and connive and manipulate, right? And the vow I made myself is that I will never take on debt. Fast forward to present day, debt has followed me in the most disproportionate way. And I have done a lot of work with John Assaraf, which was part of the secret. And
Yes.
I mean, I had done the work 2018, manifested a home at the beach, got my studies done at 40. So I had done the work, and I was like, it's all good. In 2020 COVID, I got retrenched. In other words, laid off from work. I know you guys call it laid off. And I saw that, well, here's an opportunity. I can go live my best life and do what my soul work is, which is the work that I'm doing now. That was the catalyst to my conscious uncoupling. But it seems like that the debts then just continued following me. And then the last part of this puzzle was that December last year was my largest retainer contract came to an end. And I was like, okay, God, this is another test. Let me just figure this out. Now, here's the thing, I'm resourceful, right? And I know how this manifestation thing works. And I was able to recreate or generate close between 70 and 80% back of my income. But guess what? The debt is so disproportionate, and I'm being open because I don't care. I've always just been raw on this segment. Now I'm asking this because there must be another person like me who is resourceful, can manifest, but this one part of that story from early childhood seems to still follow. And for me, it was the debt thing. I don't ever want debt. And yeah, I saw debt as, or facility, not as an evil thing. I saw it as, well, it's an enabler. It's energy. It can get me things. It can help me study. It can help me get a home and put a deposit on it, or a car, or whatever. I see it that way. But it doesn't take away the reality that the debt is now crippling. And it is, even if I've generated additional income, I'm kind of right back to where I was, where I said I never wanted to be. Can you unpack what that actually means, if you wouldn't mind? Because I'm sure there's many people that's listening that have
Yeah.
similar stories.
Sure. So I think of debt a little bit differently than most people. I believe, so number one, I mentioned it earlier a little bit, but emotional debt will always be more detrimental to your well-being than financial debt, right?
Yes.
And you said something that was really key, which is that I'm resourceful. Well, most women that I know and that, do this work, if there's not a road, they will build the road. Okay. They are powerful women. They can will themselves into success. They can will themselves into riches. They are not women who sort of are wilting and want to be saved, right? We are actually hyper independent, hyper vigilant. We are the survivors. And one thing that we know as survivors is we can will ourselves to get anything done. The problem is it's not sustainable, right? And the way I look at debt is that it's almost like, so two parts. One is, if you know anything about the law of polarity, the law of
Yes.
polarity says if there's an in, there's an out. If there's an up, there's a down. If there's a right, there's a wrong, right? We know that. And the way I see debt is, you are holding an amount month to month in the negative, which means energetically you have it already in you to hold that amount in the positive month to month. Right. And so when we start to look at, wow, I am energetically, I can hold this amount of money month to month, right? We just want to make sure that we can hold it in overflow, right?
Oh my gosh.
Does that, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I told my son that, my 18-year-old, he was saying, so Mom, what are we in for? And when I told him the figure, I said, don't worry about it. We're going to flip it on its head and it's going to be a positive balance. That was my feedback to him.
Yeah, I love that. And it's true. And I think that, when we are in debt, we can look at that from an emotional place of, why do you not feel worthy to not be in debt? Or why does debt have to be good or bad? Right? Like, what are we associating debt with? We're making debt mean something about ourselves emotionally, about our self-image, about our identity, about our power, about our ability to show up, right? What I'm learning and what I've learned through writing the book that I think has been a really deep, it's been an initiation for me, right? Because new level, new devil, right? Where it's like, there's always just another level. I think Jamila was saying it never ends. And one of the initiations that I sort of moved through is, to go from food stamps and, all of that to, over the last 3 years, surpassing 7 figures, right? That's a very different way to move. It's a very different energy. And what I'll say is, because business is up and it's down and it's up and it's down and it's never sort of, I can feel safe and secure and calm in my worth if there's $1,000 in my bank account, the same as I can feel if there was $50,000 in my bank account. Because when you start to get to that place and you can individuate and understand that who you are is not reflected in that number, you are free and liberated from in a whole different way.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anissa, I think also our perception of what debt is has always been something that's negative and always been something that's shameful, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Danielle said, is that it's about the polarity, right? Where you can look at debt as something negative, or you can look at it as something that's positive. And in viewing it as something positive, I think we need to be in a space where we are living in abundance, where we are thinking and we are moving in abundance. Because I think that when you say that debt has followed you, it's because we're so obsessed with it. We're so obsessed that we don't want debt. We don't want debt. We're not going to be living in that space of lack, that you're thinking about it all the time. It's
Mm.
always on your mind. And when you do that, and when that's just conscious about you, the universe, like it's, that's all that you are giving out.
Inspired.
That's all that you are
Mm.
sending out. So what would it send back to you? What would you attract? If you look at yourself as a magnet, and all you can send out is debt and thinking of it as a negative, then that's what's going to come to you. That's why it will
Mm.
continue to follow you. And unfortunately, that's just been the way that we were brought up, to think of it in that particular way, to think of it as something negative or something to be ashamed of, or something that you should be guilty of. Um,
Mm.
and it shouldn't be that way. It's just about your mindset, isn't it? And to know that we are divinely allowed to be living um, in abundance for financial wealth, in abundance of emotional security, in abundance of pure spirituality. Um, and it's something so difficult for us to accept. Even as you say, as women, we are resourceful. Yes, we'll go and we'll build that road, but it's also about the hustle, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to feel that we've got to hustle for the money. We should actually believe that we are deserving of it, because that's where the sustainability comes in. If you open your mind up to believing that wealth is something that moves through me, um, and comes back to me, then it's that continuous circle where we get to live and enjoy and do good with our financial wealth. And even in spending it, we don't feel that guilt or shame of doing that, because it isn't something that it's evil. It's something that is good. It's something that you can use to bring good to your life, to the lives of those that are close to you, but others as well. So for me, it's understanding and holding on to that perception and belief about financial wealth, and well-being.
Danelle, you wanted to add something to what Jamila was saying there.
Well, you know what? I was just thinking about how, because you were saying about the debt collectors when you were younger and the hiding. And I was thinking about how, if you think about debt collectors, it's their job to shame you to get you to pay, right? It's like
Very
they
much.
are psychologically and emotionally, right, trying to trigger a part of you that feels bad, that feels wrong, that feels shameful. Because what is shame? Shame is something's wrong with me. And if they are right and you are wrong and something's wrong with you, right, we are more apt to sort of shrink and shrivel and hide and right. And so,
And to be
Yes.
and who
afraid,
has the power?
afraid of, yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I just think of it like that. So I always think of, if you can extract your worthiness, your enoughness, your deservability from the number, then that number has no power of you over you.
And so it doesn't, so it's
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I love what you shared there, because I am the type of person that would be proactive. If I see something going in a direction, I don't see it as a negative. I'll phone my creditors and say, hey, let's find a possibility. How could we look at this in a lucrative way? Because I know, firstly, the number or the debt's not defining me. I won't, I went and
Beautiful.
opened up a bank account with my 18-year-old son, And I'll never forget the guy that was opening up his account was looking at my portfolio, and he made this remark, and I said, "What do you mean, like by this comment?" He said, "No, you're a boss babe in the bank world because of your code." Because the banks work on a scoring method and looks at your portfolio holistically. And that was such beautiful confirmation around debt is not a problem. It's just your perception and your lens of how you view it. Because if it was to me, I would never be taking the risk that I take as a single mother of three, Danielle. And Jamila knows I've taken some disproportionate risk that many will say, "Are you crazy?" And then have actually tried to stop me in my tracks. But the reason why I shared so boldly that story is because there are many people that are struggling with that negative connotation. Because the other thing, Danielle, is in our faith in Islam, you're not supposed to be taking out facilities because it has interest bearing, and credit and interest is seen as not acceptable in our faith practice. Now, for me, it's seen as the opposite. If I can do good and serve, and I can continue, and I'm not meaning serving by only giving money to others, because that's the other thing people have a misnomer about, is that we only do good for others if we can give them financial assistance. If we are serving in this very moment as we are now, that is an exchange, right? And that is time, and it's money, and it's a resource, and it means that we are still being of service. And the reality is that everything most people do is they're connected to money. If I can't do something for you and it's attached to money, then it's not good enough. But if I'm holding sacred space, that's the energy part that you are referring to, Danielle. So if we just come back to your earlier point, if money is seen as energy and that exchange is just that with money, then we would be having a very different relationship to it.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have 8 minutes in our segment, and we're just getting hot and fired up here and like energetically like on the vibe of okay. So now let's come back to I want to come back to something that is in your bio that I loved. That unapologetic truth telling and frequency shifting presence.
Yes.
So I have also been known to be called the truth teller.
Mm-hmm.
And another word, we spoke about it before we went live, was the bullshit detector.
Mm-hmm.
So let's call out the bullshit for what it is in terms of this conversation. And you said it so beautifully earlier on. You realize that you're the common denominator. What would you like to leave with our audience in order to detect their own bullshit?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess what's coming through, and I'm sure there's many things that I'd want to leave, but I think what's coming through right now is that you can make a decision in any moment, in any minute of your day, of your life. You can make a decision to change, right? To change your reality. That your circumstances don't create, right, your reality, that you create your reality. And that when we start to really admit to ourselves the decisions that we're making that are creating whatever it is that your results are, and when you start to be able to admit what you want, your really true desires, it will start to take you on a trajectory that is probably messy and scary and hard in some ways, but will be worth it. And so, it was over the summer that I had to look at a certain part of my life, nothing to do with money, but just relationships. And I had to decide, what is it that I really want? You know, what is it that I really want? And when I was able to have the courage to admit to myself what I really wanted, right, versus being attached to the outcome of not, because I was fearful of losing people. I was fearful of, you know, I think that's the part of growth that really is hard, is the more you grow, the more you expand, the more you start to make decisions for where you want to go, the more we're fearful of losing people. You're talking about uncoupling, right? Like we start to lose people that are not on the same trajectory and are not willing to maybe grow in the same direction, at least.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that when you start to claim that for yourself and make that decision, everything starts to reorganize to be able to get what you want. But you have to be honest about what is it that you really desire. Can you be unattached to the outcome? And can you choose yourself, knowing that that's not selfish, that is soul led.
Oh, goosebumps. Jamila, anything you want to add to that goosebump comment there?
It certainly is a goosebump comment. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's not easy to detach yourself, is it? But
No.
it's that's the key, though. The key to letting go of trying to control and allowing yourself to move into that space of flow. And I think, a huge part of that comes from believing in yourself and understanding who you are and how powerful you've been created by a divine being. And, this is something that we all are gifted, but I think that in our early years, it's just literally sadly taken away from us, where we become brainwashed into believing that we have to conform and we have to fit into these boxes, in order for us to be acceptable, and we lose focus of that power that we have. And this is my thing, is that, I don't know, in your opinion, what are 3 key points that we can go back to every day when we start to feel this insecurity, when we start to forget? Because, like we said, it's continuous work that you have to do. And as human beings, we do falter, we do tend to move into this rut of disbelief. What are 3 things that we can do that can help us to jolt ourselves back into that positive state of living in our true abundance?
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. So number 1, your body is an oracle. Your body is your own personal oracle, and it has all the answers to all your questions. So when you are starting to going down a road of asking questions, that's the mind, right? That's the mind voice. But the answer is in the body. The answer is in the soul speaks through sensation, and sensation is like an inner GPS to your direction. Right. So that's number 1. So as soon as you start asking questions, you could do a pattern interrupt of like, oh, because think about it, when we ask questions, where's our energy? It's out here.
Yeah.
We're looking for someone to tell us. Right. So go ahead.
So intuition is important, and your belief in.
Yeah, so I think that intuition is a little bit different than sensation, but I think that it all goes together. I think your feminine powers are your intuition. It is your somatic body, your sensations, and being able to translate the language of what that means for each one of us, right? Because it's different for everybody. That's not a universal language, right? Maybe there's some things like butterfly in the stomach, but there's other things that are not necessarily as universal. I think that our feminine powers include imagination. They include will and reason, and just being able to read ourselves and to navigate that inner world. That's all our feminine power. So yeah, so I think that's number 1. I think number 2 is, in order to consider yourself and to be a feminine leader, you must be fully expressed. You must be able to use your voice and be fully expressed. And so I would I would sort of ask the question of, when you share your message with anyone, with your audience, with in a podcast, like there's tons of influencers now. When you're sharing your message, right? Are you sharing it from a place, right, of being in your mission in a movement, not caring about what how people respond? Or are you still in a condition of sharing what you think people want to hear, which is a fawning mechanism? Fawning is the disease to please and appease. So it's like, where are you sharing it from? Are you sharing it from, I need to be liked? Are you sharing it from, I want to be approved of? Are you sharing it from a place of, what I need something from you? Because when you share like that, you are not in service, right? You are not in devotion. You are in duty to yourself. That's survival. You are coming from a survival place. So the way you move with that is an embodied practice. How am I writing this email? What am I embodying by sharing? It's a very different place to move. So that's number 2. And then I would say number 3 is really being able to, can you come from an identity of your essence and your true self, which is a self-image piece, an identity piece, where you now, when you come from that place, you are extracting yourself from the ego self, right? The smaller self. And you start to move from a place where I am here to share I am here as a way to move in my medicine and not move from my mind, right? Because you are the strategy. Your journey is the strategy, right? So when we do it from that, like, where am I moving from? What is the self-image that I'm moving from? Am I moving from the little girl that has all the debt? Am I moving from the little girl who had all this power over her and didn't have the words or know how to move through that? Who am I moving from? And that, when we start to understand that, we can decide who we are. We're the only ones that are putting ourselves in an invisible prison and jail and box. And can we really come from this place of, I'm going to move from my true self. I'm going to decide from my true self. I am going to show up as my true self. And I'm not going to move from that old version of me.
So I love that, because
Love that.
it took me definitely back to when I went for Vipassana, because in the Vipassana meditation practice, you are asked to connect to the sensations, your breath.
Yeah.
And when you're connecting to those parts, you truly feeling, and you become so present in that moment and not in the past or the future. You're just fully intentional in what you are feeling. And I suppose when we're looking at the manifestation aspects, seeing is not believing. Believing is when you can see it and feel it. So I think that's what I'm hearing you say, Danielle, is that the sensations are your signals. They're almost your superpowers to live from a place of abundance and fulfillment.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that.
We are on the top of the hour. I want to say thank you. We normally just do a short debrief before we end the live. Jamila, is there any closing out comments? And Danielle, is there any final gem of wisdom, your inner sage that you want to leave for others to tap into before we say goodbye?
Sure. I think that I'll say this. We can't express what we don't embody, and we can't attract what we don't express.
Mm,
And it's so simple, but it's so true. It starts and ends with embodiment. If you can't embody money, wealth, abundance, prosperity, fulfillment, happiness, satisfaction, love, you can't express it. You can't authentically be able to express that in the frequency of that, you can then attract it back to you. And so then your world becomes your feedback. loop, an immediate feedback loop. That's pretty powerful.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's almost like embodied leadership, self-leadership.
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
Jamina?
Wow, my gosh, it's just been amazing spending this last hour with you and all the wisdom that you have imparted to us. This is something that we all go through, that we all experience throughout our lives, and like we said, it's something that we spiral. So we always experiencing it from a different level. As we learn and as we educate ourselves. And I remember one quote that I read when I was still in school, Anissa, and it stuck with me, is that what the mind can perceive, it will achieve. And we just need to keep on saying those powerful affirmations to ourselves, because we tend to forget it every now and again. And it's just normal. It's who we are. It's life happens in between when we tend to forget. And I'm so grateful that I have people in my space like you two powerful women, who remind me, and those key takeaways that you've given us, Danielle, so easy to just go back to help us to shift out of the rut that we normally find ourselves in. But I think for me, just to keep on reiterating to myself and keep the belief on how powerful we have been created to be, and to always work from that space.
We're going to end off on that beautiful note. I'm going to end our live. Danielle, please stay with us. I'll thank our guest, as always, for their very active contribution. I didn't read out everyone's comments, but we are grateful for the engagement. And for those that are going to watch the replay, please don't hesitate to reach out to Danielle either via her LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever her social handles are. And yeah, her book is probably on Amazon, so please, I suppose, find her book on Amazon. And on that note, I'll end the live. We'll see you again next week. Thank you. Bye.